Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by for our weekly Wednesday night live stream. Lots to talk about tonight, of course. We could talk about the bombshell tapes that Bob Woodward released showing that Donald Trump basically from the beginning, from at least February, was lying to people about how severe this whole crisis was and how he was basically downplaying it. He says to reduce panic, but I think it's for his political purposes. We all sort of expected that, those of us on the left, but we have like audio confirmation. We could talk about Nina Turner for running for president. Something that flew under the radar today that everyone sort of just knows about is Donald Trump is and Joe Biden are seen by a majority of voters as mentally unfit for office. So there's lots we could talk about there. But in any case, very happy to see you all tonight. Samantha from the top says, would you vote in person in U.S. to ensure it's counted? I mean, Samantha, just on that, I mean, I don't think I would necessarily, I'm not there yet where I have a total lack of faith in the ballot, the mail-in. I would likely use mail-in voting if I could, but the reality is that if I had to, if for some reason I knew the mail-in voting was unsafe or unavailable, then I would certainly still vote in person. Like, if there's one thing that you have to do in person, it's vote. Like, if there's one thing you have to do, it's vote. And so, you know, I would certainly do that. And here in Canada, hypothetically, if we have an election, and, you know, we don't really do mail-in balloting all that much in Canada. But if, for instance, I had no choice but to go to the polling station in person, I would 100% do it. Yeah, I would 100% do it. One, you have to think of the reality that, like, you know, it's your vote. It means a lot. And two, you have to think selfishly that, you know, whether your vote, like, again, not everyone who watches my channel votes Biden, but pretty much no one votes Trump. And you have to think of the fact that Trump voters are just raring and ready to go to vote in person. And Democratic voters much less so. And so if it becomes very clear that it's unreliable to vote via mail, then you have to think, like, are you willing to put it on the line for democracy? And I would say yes. Now, of course, there's factors here. Like, if where I live in Canada, it's not gone. Like, the issue haven't been dealt with. But we're certainly in a much safer position than most of the United States. So if you live in a certain community where there's effectively no cases, well, then really it's not a huge risk. You wear your mask, you go, you'll probably be fine. But there are other parts of the U.S. where it's still very much like it was in the spring. And yeah, I'd be nervous, but I'm young, I'm healthy. My wife is young and healthy. We do have a baby boy, but very young children there's a whole, like, they seem to be less susceptible than adults. So, you know, our family more than most would probably be okay, but I would still be nervous about it. You know? Somebody asking me about my favorite Michael Brooks impression. I mean, his Obama was really good. His Obama where it was what Obama would be like if he was secretly what Barack Obama would be like if he was what Republicans thought he was / thought he was in secret. So, like, secret Marxist Islamist Obama. He's like, I'm gonna ban the Second Amendment for white people. Everyone else can have arms except for white people. You know, I'm nationalizing all property, etc. You know, that's definitely something to say was like a golden age Michael Brooks impression. Oh yes, Bruce wants me to plug the Discord. I don't know if other people can make invites to the Discord. Let me know if you can or can't. I don't know if I've allowed that. But feel free to plug the Discord. I don't, but, let me see. But there it is right there. No, so check out the Discord. It's a great way to keep in touch with people between the events. One, the reality is that, with mail-ins, who knows what's going to happen. Samantha's saying that there seems to be instances of mail being dumped. Look, I don't like to, everyone speculates on YouTube. Everyone does. I don't want to speculate about voter fraud. I just don't. I need to see rock hard proof either way. And I don't know. I haven't seen anything about systemic voter fraud yet. What we have right now is an effort to make the post office functionless to slow down mail-in voting. I don't think that's speculation. I don't know if we're yet at the point where ballots are physically being destroyed in order to invalidate them. Until I see that, I don't know. So one thing people are recommending is that you vote early. Another one is in certain states, you can put your ballot in a mail thing and drop it off directly at a polling station. Look up your local regulations and whatnot and check these things out because, again, I'm not an expert. But there are ways to mitigate the effect. In some states, you can, check online after a while to see if your ballot has arrived and been, included in what have you. So do all of these things. But yeah, if push comes to shove and you don't feel confident in mail-in voting, right? For whatever reason, go vote in person. It's worth the risk. Honestly, it is.
How would you just be easy about that?
William, to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, though, you could just anyone can do it, really. Like it just takes one person. And I'm sure you'll admit this, William. Barack Obama getting the Nobel Peace Prize, getting nominated for it, was a huge travesty. So just because someone is nominated for a prize or gets the prize doesn't mean they're a good or even decent person. So Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he's a monster. Donald Trump got the Nobel Peace Prize nomination, and he's even more of a monster than Obama. I don't need to waste time talking about a Nobel Peace Prize. I never talk about the Nobel Peace Prize on this channel. It's not some anti-Trump conspiracy. I just think it's utterly, utterly meaningless. Utterly meaningless. What matters more is Donald Trump lied and people died. Donald Trump lied about COVID-19. 100%. We saw the tapes. We saw my video. People might have heard Smokey. I don't know. Has there been a U.S. president that hasn't been nominated? I don't know. Because getting nominated and winning are very different things. So I wonder, has there been a U.S. president in so long that hasn't even been nominated? Again, it just takes one person, I think, to nominate somebody from the broader committee. Right? Yeah. Henry Kissinger, one of history's greatest monsters. Honestly, he really is. He's one of history's greatest monsters. Won the Nobel Peace Prize. More than nominated, he won. It's a joke prize. But Trump lied, people died. In very much it's so rich because remember the refrain from Trump supporters, from conservatives, here on YouTube, and other places, was China lied, people died. The whole narrative was China didn't take this seriously enough. They tried to cover it up. And because of that, the whole world got it, and we're all suffering. And some of that might be true. In fact, there is some evidence to suggest that China didn't want to face the reality early on, much like the United States did. But the point is, it was all about projection. And what we actually have from these tapes, and again, go check out my video on it after the stream. Let me pull up the copy of the video. I could pull one up. Let me go here and get one, and I can put it up here. But the reality is, let me see. Where is that? Right here. Shareable link. Check this out. Go check that out after the stream. is that Trump back in February knew this was worse than the flu. He knew it was something that was airborne in a sense, right? He thought it was airborne. It's actually not quite airborne, but it's transferred through droplets, which makes it over short distances airborne, and in close spaces with air conditioning, essentially airborne, right? The fact of the matter is, he knew all of that. And he knew that, he said, it's not just old people. When you had, like, I remember this. I did a video on the channel. Many of you might have watched it, where the Republican lieutenant governor from Texas, Dan Patrick, was going on Fox basically saying to people, Grandma and Grandpa are really the only ones at risk here. Grandma and Grandpa might die. Old folks might die. But the rest of us are going to be fine, and we just have to deal with it. But Trump in these tapes, yeah, if you're hearing that meow, that's definitely Smokey. He's protesting, I don't know, if I didn't feed him enough, or I fed him too much. You never know with Smokey. But the reality is, with this, Trump was saying, it's not just old people. It's not just the old and the sick and the otherwise at risk. It's affecting young, healthy people. And so we know it's trying to downplay it. In effect, cover it up or say less about it. Because the fact of the matter is, he wanted to ensure that it not cause political struggle for him. He knew it was dangerous, but maybe he thought if he could just pretend it wasn't there, he could ride it out. Maybe that was his intent. Right? If I make a big deal out of this, I'm going to have to shut down the economy. It's going to hurt my re-election chances. Biden's going to beat me. And so I know it could kill millions of Americans, potentially. Luckily, it hasn't gotten there yet, but it might, given the state of the U.S. He's like, I know it's actually dangerous to even otherwise healthy people. I know that it spreads far more easily than maybe we thought. I know it's, people like he would do, disingenuously comparing it to the flu. Those people are wrong. Yeah, exactly, Nathan. That was Dan Patrick from Texas. I did at least a couple of videos on him. Other people like him, and also folks here in Canada, conservatives here in Canada, in some places. So a couple backbench MPs were basically saying, look, this is only bad for old people. And because it's only bad for old people, we just need to ensure old people isolate and the rest of us can go on with our lives. Knowing that it's still deadly for young people, and even if you don't die, and this is important, even if you don't die, there is the potential, not necessarily a guarantee, but the potential for it to have long-term effects on, let's say, your lungs. The kind of thing that shortens your lifespan, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. But what I do know is that you're not fully in the clear necessarily once you've recovered after, say, the 2 weeks of, you get it and you isolate for 2 weeks and it's done. It's not that simple, at least not for everyone, including young, healthy people. And Trump knew all of this. We like to think of Trump as an idiot. There's a common thing we do on the left, I think more than the right does, that we assume our opponents are idiots. I don't think Donald Trump is necessarily smart, but to suggest that he actually believes what he tells his supporters most of the time is absurd. Donald Trump knows what was happening. Donald Trump knows that what he was hearing from Fauci and all the rest was happening. Right? He knew this. 100%. But he also knows that 40%, 40% of Americans that just will believe anything Trump says. Anything. People are saying I am a doctor. I am indeed a doctor, and a very real one, but of history, not of diseases or lungs, for that matter. But no, the point is, like, he knew all of this, and people died because of it. So Tomo has become a member of the channel. Thanks so much for that. That's great to see. Thank you for that. It's a great way to support the channel. Lots of ways to support the channel. Biggest way, of course, is just watching the content. When you watch a video, it encourages YouTube to show it to more people. So if there are any other videos you haven't watched in recent days after this stream, just go give them a watch. It really helps the channel. But of course, if you want to help financially, you can become a channel member here or at Patreon. And you can also become a member via, or you can do one-time contributions with Super Chats, which makes it more likely I'll read your question, and also just via PayPal as well. So thank you so much for that. I very much appreciate it. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and some Joseph saying to smash that like button, always helpful to do that, is that, you know, we just have to think about how crazy this election is. Here's something that came out which really shows that Americans are not excited about this. So I'm just going to read this out to you guys. This is what I've been talking about. And this is not me equating them. This is not me saying Biden and Trump are the same. I'm not saying that. But it is saying that people really don't have a lot of faith in Trump or Biden to actually do the job. And so this was a CNBC poll, or a poll aired on CNBC earlier today. Kind of went under the radar because it was a busy day. And it says here, the mental and physical fitness of both candidates has been brought up in various ways during their campaign, and majorities of likely voters believe that both men are mentally unfit. So it says here, 55% of national voters believe Trump is mentally unfit, and 52% of national voters think Biden is unfit. Furthermore, 51% of Trump voters think he's physically unfit. 57% of Biden voters think he's physically unfit. Now, I would say that very clearly, Biden's probably more physically fit than Trump. You've seen Biden riding around on bikes. So I think they're wrong on that one. But I don't think it's unreasonable to say that a majority of Americans think both of these men are unfit. That's where we're at. Look, I've said this before. The United States has 335 million people or so. That's 1/3 of a billion people. And supposedly the greatest democracy in the history of the world gave us two segregationist, right-wing, just old, out-of-touch white guys that, like, neither of them are all there, at least not all the time. What a failure of a system. And again, I'm not being ageist. I'm really not. Because again, the guy I supported, Bernie Sanders, is 79 years old right now. Like, yesterday was Bernie's birthday, I believe. And he's sharp physically and mentally. And age isn't the issue. Or even Michael Bloomberg, somebody I think is objectively a monster, has, it seems mentally fit to do the job. Like, just, is he mentally fit to destroy America and enslave the working class effectively? Yes, I believe he is. John Barlich says the only legit president to get the Nobel Prize was Carter. I mean, every American president getting it, it's so tricky. One, because America is often a global bad guy. But two, it's just like, to operate as president, it's I'm not saying, like, I excuse the actions of presidents, but it's just like, it's awfully hard to come off as the sort of person that can win a Nobel Peace Prize, because you have to, you're so enmeshed in these broken systems. You're so enmeshed in them. And, I don't know. It's hard. Compared to somebody else who is like a peace activist, they're like much more able to have that sort of freedom. Have you fed him, sweetie?
Why would I feed him if you're...
Well, no, I'm just asking because he's hungry, I think. Eh? I'm just... But yeah, I mean, you know, the fact of the matter is like, that's where we're at. Well, yeah, of course, the U.S. government is built to resist change, but it's also built to enact change if it serves corporate interests, specifically regime change abroad, which means it's always hard for U.S. presidents, even ones that are not really bad people, to not be monsters in the office. You know, so there are clear there. Do you know one thing about that? The Swedes do not hand out the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know why this is, but the Swedes, the Nobel Committee is based in Sweden for all of the other Nobel Prizes, economics, like literature, science, medicine, whatever. But the Nobel Peace Prize is actually handed out by Norway. I don't know exactly what that entails, but that's how it works. Like, you know, simple as that, right? So the American people don't really seem to have a lot of faith in their leadership right now. And it's just so sad because, like, they could have had Bernie, guys. They could have had Bernie. Like, you got two candidates that just, they don't represent the values and needs and wants and fears of working class people. You literally have a majority of people wanting Medicare for all. And you have one guy that wants to cut healthcare like even more. And you have another guy who basically, he says he wants a public option, but in effect, his goal is to, at the very best, get people back to the crappy Obamacare system that existed, you know, the day before Trump took office. And so you're in this sort of like limbo here. You got two guys, they don't always know where they are. They can't finish sentences sometimes. Like they brag about knowing what an elephant is or being able to read a teleprompter. And meanwhile, millions of Americans are dying from a lack of health insurance or homelessness or starvation or a combination. And the skies, I don't know if you guys have seen the videos.
The smell of smoke.
The skies in the United States are literally turning red. Like literally. Like in the west of the United States right now with all the wildfires, this, like in Oregon, the sky is turning red. You know what I mean? It's like it's literally going to hell. Like literally, it looks like hell out there. I'll just drop a link here for you so you can see what one of the shots. I believe this is yesterday afternoon in Oregon. So this is daytime. This is like midday, like 3-4 o'clock. You can see the sky is like a crimson red, right? It's, well, forest fires, right? But like really bad forest fires, like, yeah. So that, yeah, exactly. The Mark of Bride, that's the one I was sending, actually. That's the link I just put out there. That's from Oregon. Yeah, it looks crazy right now. You know? That's very interesting. Oliver makes a good point where he says Trump and Biden serve the interests of the elite. And I agree with him. But what's very interesting is that, you know, politics today is driven by the elites. And this is why they wanted Bernie to be defeated. Because the elites know they sort of win either way. But it's also the case that there are different sets of elites with different interests, or at least interests that are not fully overlapped. And so that's where it gets sort of interesting. Like, for instance, the oil executive elite might not have the exact same interests as Elon Musk. Or the tech company elites might not have the exact same interests as the financial institutions. And so it's very interesting to see how they play out. And of course, some elites are on cultural issues more progressive than others. And so, it is interesting to see how whenever a major presidential election comes up, like the civil war of the elites. Because again, Hillary Clinton had a lot of elite supporters and money. So did Donald Trump. But like, where did they come from? What were their goals? That's what's very interesting, right? It's sort of an election where the votes of regular people are the only votes that really matter, because there's like the rich people are like 1% of the vote, probably less when you factor in that really, really rich people are like the 0.1%, maybe 0.5%, right? But they're the ones that seem to set the terms of the debate. And again, that's not me equating Trump and Biden, saying they're exactly the same, because they're not. But it is to say that it's very interesting to see like these elite civil wars. They're very fascinating to me. It's something that I don't always notice in these sorts of discussions. Well, exactly. Like there are factions within the oligarchy, right? Like, well, you think about it, and even historically in Canada, it was like certain types of businesses were more likely to support the Liberal or Conservative Party. Or in Canada, politics was elite driven, but the Conservative Party was the English and Protestant elite, and the Liberal Party was mostly the Catholic, French and English Catholic, party, with certain rural farmers, like rural Protestants. This was back in the day. Things have switched in some ways, but it was like, different classes, but also different races and ethnicities. And so it is very interesting to see, right? Like the French Canadian elite were mostly liberal. The English Canadian elite were mostly conservative. And it didn't necessarily mean that there was a huge ideological difference between them, but it did mean that there were key issues that very much divided the parties. Well, that's a good point, Dan. See, Dan makes a good point. Not every elite wins every election, but elites don't really lose elections, if that makes sense. Look, right now, if I'm an oil executive, I want Trump to win. Biden is not going to be, like he said, he's not going to ban fracking. But I doubt that Biden really leans hard into it. Like if I'm a coal executive, I want Trump to win. I don't worry about Biden existentially threatening me, but I do worry about him making it a bit harder. If I am a tech executive, some of them at least, maybe I want Biden to win. If I'm do anything with green energy, I might want Biden to win because he might give us more green energy subsidies. But I don't worry too much, like if I'm Elon Musk, because Donald Trump will make it harder to form unions on the other end. So it's like, on the one hand, I might get more green subsidies. On the other hand, I'll get better, worst worker conditions, which is better for my bottom line. I sort of win in different ways, and I lose in different ways, depending on who wins. And so this is like why I think it's like we need, like, from like an analysis perspective, it's very interesting to look at the way the elites line up, because they don't just line up behind one party. We know this, right? Like even before Trump, it's like certain types of corporations were with Obama and other types of corporations were with Mitt Romney or John McCain. And it just depended on, culture, geography, which industries felt they would benefit from which sets of policies, But you're right, there are some companies that donate to both parties. I mean, here in Canada, they looked and they found that, like, the Canada doesn't have as many billionaires as the U.S. because we're a smaller country, but we actually have a similar amount, I think, per capita to the U.S. Like, we have a lot of billionaires as well, and they pretty much a majority of them donate to both the Liberal and Conservative parties, right? They give to both parties because why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you if you have literal billions? Or even say 1 billion, which is 1,000 million. Why wouldn't you give money to the liberals and conservatives? You win either way. Oh, look, like, well, look, I'm not defending Cuomo. This is always really interesting for the longer term viewers here. People will come in here and they'll be like, ugh. Well, what if I told you that Joe Biden and Andrew Cuomo suck? Like, to say like, oh, we got him, guys. We got this guy in the orange shirt. He's going to have to admit that the Democrats suck also. Of course they suck. Of course Cuomo sucks. All Cuomos is CNN Cuomo and Governor Cuomo. They all suck. They all suck. Yeah, and Cuomo did an awful job. Awful job. Awful. We have to remember that, yeah, he was dealt a bad hand. Like, luck matters in this. Timing matters. But he was trying to push through healthcare cuts when this pandemic started, which lets me know that those sorts of moves made New York less able to handle this. Right? Like, someone's like, all Cuomo, ACAB, all Cuomos are bastards. Like, so, like, when people are like, oh man, I'm going to end this guy right now, I'm going to say that Republicans or that Democrats are also corrupt. Like, I kind of feel like liberals and conservatives don't know how to handle the left. Like, I kind of feel they don't. Same thing in Canada here. Like, I'll put a tweet out that criticizes Justin Trudeau. And then they'll tell me, oh, well, why don't you just go vote for Andrew Scheer or Aaron O'Toole? He's the new conservative leader. And then I'll be like, what if I want to vote for neither? Or like, I'll criticize Aaron O'Toole and some person says you're just a Trudeau hack. It's like, no, I hate Trudeau. It's just that they both suck, in different ways on different issues and often the same way on the same issues. And I hate them both and I would never vote for either. Like, it's just like the simple reality, right? Or even if I can acknowledge Biden's not as bad as Trump and all of those things, the fact of the matter is, like, I don't have to announce one is good. I don't know about Cuomo. Mario Cuomo has passed away, so I don't know if that applies to past Cuomos. I'm not an expert on New York Cuomoography, so I don't know about Mario Cuomo, whether he's good or bad or in between. I'm not sure. But what I do know is Cuomo's done an awful job with COVID. But that doesn't mean that Trump didn't also do an awful job. And it doesn't mean that he didn't lie. Right? And it doesn't mean that he didn't try to cover this up, basically. And it doesn't mean that other Republicans who likely were getting a lot of this information as well within their hearings and just through rumors on the Hill and speaking to officials and what have you, weren't also lying. Look, timing matters with this. Like, you talk about strict rules, but like, look, the reality is timing matters. Here in Canada, all the provinces basically shut down. One of the reasons, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons far fewer Canadians in raw and per capita terms passed away or got the illness is because we shut down more quickly and more like comprehensively. Just in general, throughout the country. But various provinces, based on a few factors, were more or less likely to get hit, and it wasn't always based on what they did or didn't do. So one example, and I don't know about this in the US, like how you guys do this, but not every province in Canada does March break at the same time. Some provinces actually do it in late February, some do it in early March, some do it in mid-March, some do it in late March. That March break. It's like the week off from school. You guys might be seeing Smokey pop up on the screens right now. So the provinces that had March break early, like Quebec, got hit significantly harder than BC, British Columbia, which had March break later, even though BC was closer to East Asia. BC, for those who don't know Canadian geography, is just north of Washington State. Like it's right on the coast, like Washington and Oregon and California. And they had a later March break, so their government, like the premier there and the prime minister, they were able to say, we recommend strongly you don't travel because we don't know if you're going to be able to come back. Like everything's getting shut down. Whereas Quebec, they had just started coming back from their March break. So to a certain degree, some of this is luck-based. Like some of it is luck-based. So the U.S., in some ways was luckier than Europe because it came later to North America and they still failed. But that does matter. That does matter. Other things matter too. Density. Is your state a hub for international travel? The smaller maritime provinces where there's less people, and there's only like a couple international airports in the entire region, and they don't actually have a whole lot of truly international flights. They're basically only flights to U.S. airports. Those places of Canada didn't really get a lot of cases. New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland. They didn't really get a lot of cases. It was big cities with big airports and things like that. And Montreal got hit especially hard because of that combined with the timing. So, I mean, look, in a sense, yeah, like Cuomo did awful. Did awful, 100%. But we have to remember, Cuomo was at the beginning of the wave. And so, yeah, he did awful, but he was also like the first one hit. He bore the brunt. His state bore the brunt, like New York State. And then you have Florida. And for weeks, because the Florida peak didn't happen for it was like a month. Like for weeks, we were warning them, like everyone, like all people, Fauci, everybody else was saying, this is coming, Florida. You're not doing anything. You haven't closed things down. Do something. It's coming. And you had Ron DeSantis on the news or whatever doing interviews basically saying, like, they said it was coming 2 weeks ago and it's not here yet. And I think it's all alarmism. And lo and behold, about a week and a bit after he said that, they were getting like 10,000 cases a day. Florida, in one of their days, got more cases than some Canadian provinces had in total. Some of our larger provinces even. Florida in like a week got like the amount of cases Canada got total. And Florida and Canada have a similar population. Like Florida's got about 20 some, like low 30s, I think, in population. Canada's like 35. So Florida has a few million people less than all of Canada. Our country is large and mostly empty, in case you haven't realized. In like a week, you guys got what we got. John saying that New Zealand did really well. They did. They did extremely well. A bunch of factors. Again, they are relatively out of the way. In fact, if you look at a lot of world maps, sometimes they forget to put New Zealand on it. They just forget. They forget there's a country just south of Australia, southeast of Australia. But the fact of the matter is, they really. Which one's that? I don't know. Did my internet go down? One second. I don't know if the internet. There we go. We're still live. Let me see. Yeah. See, guys. Okay, I don't know what's happening here. The stream page seems to have frozen, but the internet seems good, and YouTube still seems to be working. but I don't know. Did you guys still have me there? Okay. So that was just me talking at you guys while I couldn't see you. Okay. Sorry about that. That was weird. The internet basically froze. Yeah. New Zealand did really good. They were out of the way a little bit, so they got lucky. Again, timing matters. They shut down very quickly, both their borders, but also, just internally. One thing they did more than a lot of Western countries did was contact tracing. That's what they did a lot in Southeast Asia. Like why countries like Vietnam, besides that border China in some cases, or that are extremely close to China, basically had no cases, is because they shut down super quickly. They had a lot of masks, and they basically, when you came to the country in some cases, they would make you isolate in the hotel. They basically quasi put you under house arrest. And maybe we wouldn't have tolerated that in North America because we have different standards for civil liberty. But they also, they had good contact tracing. Basically, if someone got it, they knew every single person that person had come into contact with. And they immediately called those people up and got them tested. Right? And New Zealand did a lot of that too. So because of that, they were able to effectively get the few dozen, maybe a couple hundred cases they got, and get all of those people isolated. And then at that point, it's big, because the crucial issue with this was limiting community spread. Once you got community spread, it was game over, because community spread really made it very difficult to tell. As long as all the people getting it were in, as long as the people getting it were in, airports or coming in over the border or whatever, you could get a general sense for who it was. As long as all the cases were coming from outside of the country or outside of your state even, or province, you were fine. Right? You were fine. It's not ideal, but you're fine. Once it starts spreading in your community and it starts going from person in your town to another person in your town to that person's household, then you're in big trouble. And that's what happened pretty much everywhere, to be fair. Even in countries that have ended up doing an okay job. But that's what happened even here in Canada. We started getting community spread. And once that happens, it's really hard to address it. And New Zealand was able to really avoid having significant community spread. But the fact of the matter is, the U.S. did an awful job. And yeah, it's not just on Trump. It's not. Now, he could have done more. This is the kind of issue that Trump could have flexed his muscle more on his federal powers. In emergencies, the federal government has a right to impose itself more on a lot of these issues. Trump could have done that. I know it's not an easy decision to make, but it's something that a president might have to do. You don't want to infringe on the states too much. I get it. You don't want to overstep your powers, but it's something he should have done. Here in Canada, Trudeau could have done it. Didn't really have to, because the provinces early on sort of all agreed with him. But if there were a few states that basically weren't playing ball, Trump could have and should have basically imposed restrictions on them. Right? So, it's one of those things, right? It's not only on Trump. It's not only on Trump. But Trump is the president, and you could damn well believe that if it went well, he'd be taking the credit. So I think that when it's not going well, he could take some of the blame. Simple as that. Yeah, you criticize the Democratic governors, especially Cuomo, but not exclusively him. They didn't necessarily do great jobs either. And criticize Nancy Pelosi. I don't have issues with that either. Criticize Nancy Pelosi for getting that haircut, which made her up to be a huge hypocrite. And hurt the cause of social solidarity, which is essential to these lockdowns, right? Like, that matters too, 100%. You know? But one thing, though, is that Trump was the one that really tried to politicize this, too, where he made it all about the blue states failing. But Trump admits in these tapes that this is a big deal and he's underplaying it. So in a sense, Trump knew how serious this was, but still took the opportunity to effectively say, we're no bailout for blue states. Like, this is hitting, because at first we remember it hit New York State and California harder than it hit, say, Florida and Texas, right? And so it was like, no blue state bailout, no blue state bailout. This is just a bailout to the failure governors in California and New York. We're not going to do it. Mitch McConnell said the same thing. But lo and behold, I mean, the real waves that came afterwards came from those red states, right? Well, my name is Hello. The U.S. does have a federalist system, and he can't, and you're right that he has limited powers because of that. But in a national emergency, the federal government in countries like Canada and the United States can impose powers that they don't normally have. Right? And of course, all of those could be challenged maybe at the Supreme Court by the states. But here in Canada, for instance, if needed, Justin Trudeau could have used federal power to demand certain things closed down in certain provinces, even if that decision under normal circumstances would be purely provincial. Like, let's say a province refused to close down its schools, and it was needed. And it was going to cost lives. He could have demanded the schools closed. The province could have then said, actually, under the Constitution, how schools operate is very clearly provincial in Canada. It's a local and provincial power in general. But then Justin Trudeau could have said, his lawyers or whatever at the Supreme Court could say, yes, we acknowledge that, but we're in a state of emergency. And during the state of an emergency type scenario, we can impose temporary special powers over the provinces. And closing down schools could have been one of those things, even if technically it violates the Constitution. Like not violates it, but even if technically it goes beyond the traditionally allocated powers of the federal government during the Constitution. Well, yeah, and Craig's right. Like, it's not just partially Trump's fault. I mean, he had a massive failure. And look, I don't disagree for a second that even if Trump did everything right, there wouldn't have been some like wacko, other wacko Republicans especially, that would have just totally dropped the ball at the local level. Like, there's a hypothetical scenario where a Republican is in power, let's say like Mitt Romney is president, and he does more or less the right thing. I'm not giving Mitt Romney a lot of kudos, but, you know, there were conservative premiers here in Canada, and there were conservative governments in some parts of Europe that didn't, you know, crap the bed on this one. And so it's hypothetically the case that like a moderate Republican might have done the right thing, but, you know, the far-right conservative governors and Congress people and state representatives could have still blocked him. You're right. You could have had a scenario where Florida still goes rogue even against a Republican president. So, but like it's where we're at. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch on tonight, because I'm interested to see where people are, because a lot of people have been asking for this, is that the news last night, it aired on the Young Turks, is that Nina Turner has officially said she's looking into running in 2024. Now, a lot of people wanted to see that. When we were talking here on the channel back in those glorious days where Bernie was leading, I'd say a lot of people wanted her to be vice president. Maybe they didn't, like, whether they thought it was going to be likely or not, I don't know. But a lot of people were like, Bernie should pick Nina as vice president. And so she has basically said she's looking into it for 2024. And I think this is really fascinating because there's so much at play here about, would Nina be able to carry forward the Bernie coalition? What is the context of 2024? Like, is it a Trump after his second term? Is it, Joe Biden? Is she primarying Biden? Which, often sitting presidents don't really get primaried. Like, they don't really face an actual meaningful primary. Is it her versus Kamala Harris, who's the sitting VP, because, and Biden's not running again? Is it her versus Kamala Harris because Biden resigned before his term was up or passed away or whatever? And it's her versus Kamala Harris, the current president, but not elected? Like, is Nina the best person in terms of her rhetoric? I think she's certainly up there. Are there limitations with her running because, she hasn't held an elected office in quite a while? It was only at the state level, and she never won re-election to her office. Like, she never won an election, and she's never won a statewide election. Are there going to be worries about her ability to actually be an effective electoral politician versus, say, a movement leader? And maybe in some ways you need to be both to be a leftist and win. These are all things I'm really interested in people thinking about. Is it a good tactical move because, Nina running could be the best person to champion left-wing energies in 2024, with maybe someone like AOC biding her time for 2028. AOC maybe making a Senate run or just continuing to build her profile. Would people rather see somebody more politically established run, like, say, Rashida Tlaib, who will by that point have already been a 3-term congresswoman? Providing that she, wins her primary in 2022, she will have served basically 3 terms in Congress and won 3 elections. I don't know. What do people think? People wonder, is that the best move for someone like Nina Turner? Right? Is it the best move to run for president, or is there more value in her trying to win a seat in Congress? Right? The squad is special because they're actually in office. It's not just AOC running for president and then just not being anything after that. The reason Bernie was special is that, he was a rare example of a democratic socialist actually in Congress, in the House, and then in the Senate, in U.S. politics. So I think she would, in a lot of ways, maybe be a great candidate. In a lot of ways, be fantastic. One of the best speakers out there, can fire people up, is a good principled progressive. Some of her negative issues that, like she supported charter schools back when she was in Ohio politics. I believe she shed some of those less than good ideas. Obviously has a lot of trust and loyalty from the Bernie base. It would not hurt for the left's standard bearer to not be a white person, a white man again. I know Bernie Sanders was Jewish, and had that Jewish identity does make him different from a lot of politicians. It's very rare to see a Jewish person be that close to winning the presidency. But, from an image perspective, having a relatively young black woman run, I think could be really good. Could be really good. And so I think that it's certainly something to think about. Somebody says Neera to run for Senate. Neera Tanden, God, that'd be awful. Nathan, I don't necessarily know if it was clear. The clip I saw was just in general, will you run in 2024? And she said she's looking into it. And maybe what she's looking into is, one, will I do it? And two, if I do it, in what context? Will I do it as an independent? Will I do it as a, will I do it through the People's Party? Will I do it through the Green Party? Will I try to get, the nomination of multiple small parties? Right? Like, these are all things that I don't know if she's really thought about. But these are questions she would need to ask. We have to remember that, like, if she runs as a third party candidate, it's unlikely she would win. And I'm not going to make a special example for Nina. I really do think that the Green Party strategy of running people for president is pretty misguided. And that what we know from Canadian history in terms of building viable third parties is that you don't start by running for the highest offices. You start by winning local races. Not necessarily just local as in municipal. I'm not saying you just ignore federal politics, but like you try to win a seat in California through the jungle primary system. Or you try to win a seat, maybe try to, win a Senate seat in a small, relatively progressive state like Hawaii or Vermont. You try to win statewide elections. Try to win the statewide election in a state like that, where you don't have to spend a ton of money. You can bring it. You can funnel national money into the small state. You can funnel national volunteers digitally and in person into the small state, and you could basically put the entire weight of a third party behind winning one congressional or Senate seat in one of those states, and that'll give you so much more legitimacy. Like, if you're running as a third party, I honestly think the Green Party winning one seat in the House would mean so much more than them getting an extra 2 or 3 or 4, or frankly, even 5% more than they currently get. And I know there's like a 5% funding threshold thing, but no one cares about that. No one cares. Average voters do not even know that exists. If you can go on CNN on election night in November and say Howie Hawkins, who didn't run for president, because president doesn't really matter for the Green Party because they can't win it, Howie Hawkins is the new congressman from an urban district in New York or wherever, or Seattle, or a place that will elect Greens, that will be much bigger. Much bigger deal. And so if I'm Nina and I'm going to run third party, I don't run for president as a third party candidate. Right? I don't run for president as a third party. I mean, I think what you have to do what Bernie did. For better or for worse, it's the best chance a leftist has to be president. You try to take over the Democratic Party. Or, And even the People's Party, I think honestly their focus should be to run local candidates. Run congressional candidates. Because again, there are a few states where you can do that and you don't even risk like splitting the vote. There's a few examples. One, there are states like Maine where they actually have a ranked ballot. So you can run and you can tell people, mark us number 1, mark the Democrat number 2, and that way you don't actually help the Republican. You can vote progressive without splitting the vote, if that's a worry you have. And as we've talked about on this channel before, we have the states like California have the jungle primary, where basically they do a pre-election in the primary where everyone runs, and as many people I think as they want can run for as many parties. So more than one Democrat can run, more than one Republican can run, and then what happens at the end is that the final two, even if they're from the same party, get on the ballot in November. That's what happened with Shahid Buttar and Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi got way more votes than Buttar did in the primary, to be clear. But they were first and second. Buttar was second place. And so, it's Pelosi versus Buttar. And so, now you can vote against Pelosi in an outside of a primary, in a general election, and not give your vote to a Republican or to a third party candidate that would make it more likely to get a Republican. Right? You know? And so I think if I'm the People's Party, I look at these sorts of things and I say, hey, what if we really got behind a progressive candidate in one of these types of districts? What if? You know? What if we did that? And we got on some ballots that way. Maybe that's the way to do it. So I don't know. I kind of, see, I'm torn, right? I want to see Nina run for president because I think she'd do a great job in so many ways. In debating, in her speeches. God willing, we're allowed to actually have rallies in person by then. God willing. And her rallies would be super energetic. I know that, like Bernie, she would inspire a lot of other people. But I almost feel like, you know, Bernie ran for president, but when he lost, he went back to the Senate. You know, she doesn't have another political office to go back to. Right? You know? She doesn't have a political office to go back to. And so I wonder if it makes more sense to run for Congress. And again, it makes a lot of sense from a logistics perspective because Nina's got a national movement. More than anyone else, more than anyone in the squad did before they became part of the squad. Like before they won. More than Cori Bush or Jamal Bowman or Charles Booker or Mondaire Jones or any of these other people who ran as progressives. If she primaried a Democrat in a safe Ohio district or somewhere else, I don't know where else she has connections, why couldn't she win? Why couldn't she win with all the money she could raise? With all the internet, like all the phone banking. Imagine the phone banking that Nina Turner could drive through the Bernie movement. Whereas running for president, it's already been proven that like even Bernie couldn't quite get over the top for whatever reason. Right? So I'll support her decision, and you damn well know that if Nina runs for president, this channel is going to cover it, you know, pretty extensively. But I wonder if that's like selfish on my end, and I think the best move longer term is for her to maybe run for Congress. And I think having her voice in Congress might even be better. And then maybe run for president, you know, in 2024. I don't know. I have to think about this more. And I think Nina has to think about it more too. You know, the question wasn't, you know, are you running for president or nothing else? It was just, are you going to run for president? But, you know, the question could have been phrased, you know, if not president, what about Congress? What about Senate? What about state office again? And I think, like, that's an easier sell. Yeah, Nina running for Congress as a Justice Dem. Ro Khanna, that'll be interesting. That's another interesting question. Provided Biden and Harris win, which again is not a guarantee, provided they win, you know, do you think that who do you think's got her Senate seat? Right? Like, who do you think's going to fill that seat? You know, Ro Khanna should run. He definitely should run. He's the, you know, Katie Porter could also run. I know she was more of a Warren supporter, but she's certainly more progressive than Feinstein or Harris. So that would be a net positive. Like, it would just, like, you know, so that'll be interesting. Hopefully that seat gets filled by somebody better. But again, she might lose. That's always something to consider with Senate, because it really does matter. The Senate's always razor thin, and every seat matters. It's like when, it's one of the reasons why Warren wasn't picked. Maybe not the main one, but because I think the way it works in Massachusetts is the governor makes the replacement, and the governor is a Republican there. So, yeah, Scott, Biden is losing his mind, but so is Trump. I don't know if you were here. A majority of Americans think that both Biden and Trump are mentally unfit for office. Over 50% for both of them. So, you know, Trump can use the sleepy Joe Biden meme all he wants, and it's actually not even always 100% lying. But I feel it's such a double-edged sword. It's because it just reminds people that this is a man that brags about knowing what an elephant is. This is a man that brags about being able to walk up or down a ramp. This is a man that brags that one time he could drink a glass of water with two hands, or without two hands, excuse me. This is a man that drags his foot sometimes because he can't walk. And again, Trump's running for president. If the American people vote for him, he can be president. But every time he brings up sleepy Joe Biden, people are like, "Oh yeah, you're not doing too great either, Donald. You're not exactly a spry young lad yourself, in any sense of the word." That's the thing. People bring up Jim Crow Joe, and I know my name is hello. You're not a Trump supporter. I know that, but Donald Trump, he had segregated land holdings. It was also Jim Crow Donald. His family was rooted in the same thing. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, Joe Biden's an awful person. But I hear it brought up with the implication that somehow Donald Trump isn't everything Biden is, but often a bit worse. People asking, will Nina run with the People's Party or the Democrats? See, I guess I don't know. No clue. I don't know if she's going to run. I don't know if she's going to run for who or what office. I think that's why when she was asked, I think she basically left it to, I'm thinking about it, yes. Basically saying stay tuned. But how that's going to look, I'm not sure. A lot of that's going to depend on her own wishes, but also what's the People's Party strategy? The People's Party, isn't running a presidential candidate this election. Right? They're not. I don't some of their people are going to be with Biden. Some of them aren't, I don't know, but they're not endorsing a candidate. Will they run a candidate in 2024? I don't know. That's something that party has to decide. Somebody asking the debates. I don't know if I'm going to stream the debates live, Joseph, for a few reasons. Well, for one key reason, actually, is that the debates are often aired on a network television station. And if you live stream them, you tend to get hit with a copyright strike pretty quickly. Whereas the streams that we used for the convention were just directly from the party's YouTube, and they didn't use copyright strikes. There were issues sometimes where they would play copyrighted music, but the feed itself was public access, public domain. They let anybody restream it, just unfiltered. It probably won't be like that if Fox News is running their debate. We will likely get copyright struck. In such case, what I'll likely do is, just do an immediate post-debate live stream. As soon as the debate ends, do a live stream, and we'll talk about what we saw. And again, I think the first one is on September 29th, and I know that's being hosted by Chris Wallace from Fox News, which I think is a pretty fair choice, all in all. I don't think he's necessarily going to be biased for or against either candidate. So it'll be an interesting debate. People are asking, I got a question here, I didn't see it. The DSA in Canada. The DSA, I don't know what the DSA in Canada is. There's people brought it up, we have you guys have the Democratic Socialists of America. There's a group that I've seen on Facebook now and then called the Democratic Socialists of Canada. But from what I can tell, I can't tell very much. Like, somebody were asking, is it a grift? I don't know. Like, I'm not going to call something a grift unless I know it's a grift. All I know is I know no one involved. I know nothing of it. I've never seen them beyond Facebook ads. None of that. Right? So, and I also don't see the point. They already have other groups like them, like Courage, other groups that are dedicated to moving the NDP leftward, some of them moving the Green Party leftward, at least until the leadership election. Groups formally within the NDP trying to move the party leftward, like the Socialist Caucus, things like that, or Momentum. And so I don't see the need for a DSC like the US needs a DSA. But are they grifters, or is it like a scam? I don't know. I don't think I know anybody involved. So I don't know. If it is one, it's not very successful. John Barlich says, September 29th is my mom's birthday. John, give her the worst birthday present and just have her watch that debate. If you just, Mom, here's your president. Your president. Mom, here is your president. One of these two men will rule us and we'll have to deal with it. But also, Mom, here is your president. We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't think she's going to like that. You might want to give her that joke present and then a real actual present. Chris, I mean, yeah, I think Biden has early stage dementia and also Trump. I really do believe that. But, you know, like, it's not always evident. Not every day. Like, there are days where Biden sounds okay. There are days where Trump sounds okay. Like, not what they say. What they say is awful for the most part. But, yeah, both men are definitely there. And that's why, again, a majority of Americans think that these men are not fit for office. John Barlich asks, yo, where Bree at? Bree has been working tonight. She actually is just right here, but she's been working tonight. Very busy with work.
Hi, John.
Bree says hi. She misses you all, but just it's been really busy lately. Hopefully, we'll get a window where things have cooled down at work a little bit. They've just had big projects at her job right now, so when things cool down a little bit, she might be able to be on stream a little bit more regularly, which will be nice. Golden Green asks what I think about the Green Party in or Dmitry Lascaris of the Green Party. I mean, I'm a partisan NDPer. I'm not leaving the NDP to join the Green. I know it's too, like, the leadership deadline's passed now. Like, you can't vote for the leadership of the Green Party if you're not currently a member by this point. But like, I didn't join the Green Party to vote for anybody, whether it's Maryam Haddad or whether it's Kuttner or whether it's Lascaris. In a lot of ways, he is clearly one of the best 2 or 3 candidates. Like, Justice Greens is a group that I think is recommending a ranked, like, you get a ranked ballot, and they're recommending that he be ranked first, and that I think Haddad be ranked second and Kuttner third, and I don't think they recommend ranking beyond that. In a lot of ways, him and I agree on a good chunk of policy. But like always, my big issue with the Green Party is, like, goes beyond him. It's not issues with him necessarily. It's a party that has said from the forefront that we don't whip votes. How can you transform a party effectively if you can't actually, ask people to vote your vision? There's a lot of issues there. Also, one concern I have, and again, I can't tell people to act on it because I'm a hypocrite. I support electoral reform, but a more successful Green Party only helps the Liberals and Conservatives right now. And Dmitry, unlike Maryam Haddad, has not really prioritized cooperation with the NDP. Some of the other left candidates have said, very clearly, I want to minimize competition between our two parties. Now, whether that's genuine or not, or whether that's her attempt to encourage NDP supporters to come over to her temporarily to make her leader, but, like, I think she's mused about, for instance, not running candidates against at least the more progressive NDPers, or not running candidates against NDPers where it's close races, or something like that. I don't know if they've made a commitment, but I think that might be a more sound strategy. Again, first past the post is unfair, and I do not begrudge anyone who votes Green, because I can't go to a Green member and say, don't vote for Green, or don't vote for the Greens because your vote is wasted, because that's exactly what the Liberals say to the NDP. Now, to be fair, the NDP has far more seats than the Greens, and often has far more seats than the Greens, but I'll never tell somebody not to vote Green because their vote is wasted. But what I will say is that's a calculation people have to make. If one candidate is proposing cooperation between the two viable parties that may be on the left, although, because the Greens currently are a center, maybe even center-right party on some issues, under somebody else like Lascaris or Haddad or whatever, they might be left-wing or center-left. And so you would want those people's support to not divide left-wing parties. One thing I am hopeful of, if they win, and I'm not necessarily convinced they will, I still have a feeling that a neoliberal is going to win. Heading up. Yeah. Everyone say goodnight to Bree.
Good night.
Good night, Bree. One thing is that that a lot of people have been musing about an NDP, like an NDP Green merger. But I've always seen that as a bad idea for a lot of reasons, because, like, the Green Party is far too different from the NDP. And I don't want my party to merge in with, like, a neoliberal party. But fact of the matter is, if it's led by somebody more progressive and the party is transforming, then maybe those people that want a merger of the NDP and the Greens could get one. And maybe it would be more effective and more impactful. I mean, the polling I've seen is that, based on some assumptions, I did see an analysis done last year that showed that the NDP Greens together would get about, 26% of the vote or so, in the mid-20s, depending on the poll. And they would win a few more seats based off the fact that, like, in in parts of the country where the Greens do poorly and the NDP, or in parts of the country where the NDP does poorly, they can still nonetheless add their votes together to add up to more seats. And so they make pickups in many parts of the country based off their votes being combined. Right? Now, of course, it doesn't always necessarily work like that. The Greens and the NDP merging could lead to like people leaving because they don't like the result. Like, you might like the Greens and you might like the NDP, but together you don't like them. Or you might leave because you only like the Greens or you only like the NDP. Or you could have new people join. You could have a former Liberal saying, I didn't vote for the NDP or Greens because I didn't feel they could win, but now that they're together, they're stronger, and now I feel they can win, so now I'm in. So I don't know. We'll have to think about these things. But the only way a merger is ever going to happen is with a left-wing leader. But I think, honestly, what's going to happen is that, Dimitri Lascaris especially is going to do well. He's going to do well. I think he's going to do quite well. But I still think some sort of neoliberal eco-capitalist is going to win, and Elizabeth May's vision for the Green Party, more or less, is just going to continue. And the Green Party in Canada is going to be like a centrist party. And I don't think much is going to change in that regard. Yeah, there's also different party cultures too. There's different party cultures. There is. The NDP is more hierarchical. It's an older, more established party. The Green Party, at least theoretically, again, they don't believe in telling their MPs how to vote, which makes it very difficult to be a party, actually. Especially as you get bigger. Raw Material saying that Biden might try to out-Republican Trump. I don't know if I would go quite that far. Like, clearly, like, Biden is still talking about certain issues in a way Trump never would. But I do agree that Biden is definitely trying in some ways to emphasize that, like, he's more pro-law and order. Not in the way a Republican would talk about it, necessarily, but almost as if to say, actually, it's the Democratic Party that cares more about law and order because we want to treat police officers and protesters with respect. And I'm not saying I agree with his strategy or his rhetoric, but it is, I guess, to say more like, I guess it is to say more like he's leaning into these things. He's leaning in to say, like, Donald Trump's the only one that wants to defund police. I made a video about that. Let me drop a link in the description. Be sure to check this one out after the stream. But it's something that to certainly look into. Let me see right here. Let me bring this up here. But this is definitely something a lot of people are looking into. He says here, Biden says the only one who wants to defund the police is Donald Trump. He said that he's been saying that, but he said that yesterday in particular. Now, again, I don't think this strategy is going to work. I don't think it's going to work, but it's definitely something he's leaning into. I think it's a bad move because he's trying to like capture this moderate Republican. And I'm not saying those people don't exist, but I guess I'm saying that most of those people have already come to Biden, if that makes sense. That the kind of Republican that's still with Trump right now, I don't know how many more of those people are going to leave Trump. And so I kind of think if you're me, or if I'm Biden, more accurately, so I know that was awkward, but if I'm Biden, I guess my strategy, my inkling is, well, why don't I reach out to progressives more? Because when I hear Biden say, actually, it's Donald Trump that wants to defund police, I want to give the police even more money. I don't think necessarily that Trump comes off as more progressive there. Because we know how Trump talks about protesters. So it's not like I get the impression that Trump is actually harder on cops than Biden. But what I do hear is Biden actually isn't, listening to Black Lives Matter. He isn't actually listening to these movements. And so the differences between them seem smaller. Why is Biden bragging about giving the police more money than they've ever had? So I see Biden's strategy where he, again, whether he's out Republicaning Trump or not, I think that's too hyperbolic. But when he tries to emphasize that he's a center right corporate Democrat, rather than emphasize that, he has some elements of his platform, at least if whether they're honest or not, are actually somewhat progressive. He's appealing to voters that don't really exist or that are already with him. And he's losing those 20, 30, 40 million people that could vote, that might vote for a Joe Biden if he just reached out to them a little bit more. Look, there are Bernie or busters. Like, there are people that are like, I won't vote for Biden no matter what. But that's very much an online phenomenon. And I don't want to dismiss those people and say that they're not real. I know some of them are real. Some of you are Bernie or busters. You will not vote for anybody but Biden, or you certainly, or Bernie, or you might have voted for somebody else, but you won't vote for Biden. No matter what he does, you're not voting for him. But that's a very, very small part of the electorate. Most people that are currently not voting for Biden, if Biden did more to reach out to them by talking to them, by getting people that understand them to talk to them, by running on policies that matter to those groups and to those groups, the family members of those groups, that's when he starts winning them over. So, that's definitely something to consider, right? Like, I don't know if that strategy is going to work. Did you guys see this story? This is, I don't even know if it happened, but it's kind of funny. There's a story here about, apparently a cop got made fun of at a Boston area Ace Hardware. It says here, you guys are definitely going to enjoy this one. Maybe I'll put the link here in the description. You guys can read it. But here you have here. This is from the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, so a police officers union, basically, saying, sadly, one of our officers had a bad experience at Ace Hardware store in Allston today. I don't know where that is. I'm assuming it's a Boston suburb or whatever. While in the store, an employee stated, quote, "I smell bacon," end quote. When the officer asked for an apology, he was told there'd be none. In response, items purchased were returned and a customer lost. Top comment from Rob Russo, friend of the channel, says no one cares. Again, I don't even think that necessarily happened. That police have made this stuff up. I don't know if you guys remember that Shake Shack story from a couple months ago where the police tried to claim that a New York Shake Shack, the workers there poisoned them, which didn't happen. And the media ran with that, like 3 police officers poisoned by, minimum wage workers. And then it came out the next morning that they did get sick, but it was due to like an industrial, like soap got into their food. It was like an accident, a good faith accident. But then it came out that didn't even happen. And they weren't sick. And they didn't get poisoned. And they just lied about it. So I love, it would not surprise me if that didn't happen. If a police officer didn't go into an Ace Hardware and they just made it up. Or that a police officer went into an Ace Hardware, was being an asshole. Maybe he wanted like a thin blue line, Blue Lives Matter discount. And the worker there was like, I can't do that, sir. I'm not authorized to give discounts. I don't control pricing at this national hardware store thing. And then he like bitched about it or whatever. And then he was probably asked to stop. And then somehow that got translated into, I smell bacon, and the police are the victims now. I love how the police, on the one hand, are like, they wear the Punisher logo, and they like act like they're just the baddest asses in the world. And yet, when push really comes to shove, there is no bigger baby than cops. There's none. Right? Like, there's no bigger baby. The guy at the hardware store said I smell like delicious bacon. The Shake Shack, they poisoned me, but they actually didn't. I was just lying to get sympathy. I'm a police officer, and my order was late, and they made me go wait for the food, and I had to cry about it and film it on the internet. Like, my God. My God. Fucking babies. Fucking babies, man. Just ridiculous. Try. Lou Dobbs, apparently on Fox News tonight, said Trump had a great day, a day that any president can only dream of. I guess they're only focusing on the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh yeah, raw material reminding me of that story where, as David Dole covered on the Rational National, of that young boy who has Asperger's syndrome, who just getting shot by the police because his mother was worried about his mental health and called the police. And I'm not blaming his mother at all, but it's a shame that we don't have the resources in most places, including here in Canada, that if someone needs help, the only people we can call are people that see people with mental illnesses as risks and not people in need of care. And so a 13-year-old boy got shot by police. Craig asked me, do you think the NBNDP, the New Brunswick NDP, would benefit from the strategy of the federal Green Party took that you talk about of establishing a foothold by winning a single seat? Yeah, Craig, I do. I do think that. And actually in New Brunswick, it's what the Green Party did in New Brunswick. So a long electoral history of New Brunswick. This is really niche. This is me talking about the province I grew up in. And it's one of the smaller Canadian provinces. So it's a deep cut, guys, but maybe you'll find it interesting. The long history of the province is it was a two-party province, basically, for most of New Brunswick history. Whereas many provinces in Canada are multi-party provinces. There might be two principal parties, but there's often like a third party. Like here in Ontario, most of the time there was the Liberals and Conservatives, but the NDP were often the third party, but sometimes they would win and sometimes they would finish second. And so New Brunswick was a third-party province, a three-party province, and there was one NDP member of the legislature. They called them MLAs in New Brunswick. Her name was Elizabeth Weir, and she was very popular and very well known. But when she retired, they had no one to replace her. And so for a long time, the NDP couldn't win a seat in New Brunswick. And a big part of it was first past the post. The party would actually win, in some cases, in the mid-teens of vote, 15, 16% of the vote. But because they could never get enough votes in one particular riding, one of the 40, 50-some ridings in the province, they couldn't get a seat. They just couldn't get one. So they just kept finishing in third, but whereas the legislatures would just be full of Liberals and Conservatives. They would never win one seat. And what happened a couple election cycles ago in New Brunswick is that the Green Party, which never got anywhere near the total amount of votes the NDP did, ran an entirely local-focused campaign for their leader, David Coon, in Fredericton. And in one particular part of Fredericton, like heavy in students, where the professors all live, one of the more urban parts of the province, one of the more progressive parts. And they put all their resources into there. Right? Into there. And they won. They won. And again, in that election, the NDP got more votes than they did. And then I think in the next election, what happened was that the Green Party sort of became the default non-liberal, if you were quote unquote on the left and you didn't want to vote for the New Brunswick Liberals, the Green Party became the option. And so what happened was, in a sense, the Green Party, despite getting far fewer total votes than the NDP, focused in on literally one riding and won it. And then in the next election, they won that riding again, plus two more. Right? And so, yeah, if you're a new party, that doesn't mean don't run other people. Like, run people all over the province. But it does mean focus your resources in the beachheads that you can win. In terms of where the NDP should run in New Brunswick, look, I'm not on the ground enough to make a definitive case, but my inkling is either in urban cores of Fredericton and or St. John. Both of those cities are predominantly English-speaking, which is good because the Francophones are largely linked to the Liberal Party in Quebec, or excuse me, well, in New Brunswick. And so you don't have to worry about breaking that Quebec or that French Canadian New Brunswick Liberal Party linkage. And running in those cities means that you have the opportunity to maybe tap into some students, tap into urban folks, tap into unionized workers potentially. That would be the basis. It's also, those ridings are physically smaller. New Brunswick, again, at the federal level, only has 14 seats, 10 seats we only have 10 federal seats in Parliament, but the provincial legislature has 40 some. So cities like St. John, Fredericton, Moncton have one federal MP for the entire riding, but provincially, some of the ridings are actually just the downtown cores of these bigger cities. And so there's potentially the case that if you run in urban Moncton or St. John and Fredericton, that you only have a portion of a city to cover, which means you can canvass a lot more effectively. You don't need to rely on covering a big swath of the rural part of the province. So that would be my inkling. And you probably don't want to run somewhere where the Greens are strong, because those are going to be the kind of voters you need. I don't think you would want to take on a Green candidate. I think you would want to run in a riding where the Greens had yet to win. But again, I'm not on the ground there. I haven't lived in New Brunswick since 2009, when I left to start graduate school and I came to Ontario in central Canada. So, I mean, I don't know. Yes, the one thing you could say about the NDP, the New Brunswick NDP, is that given their size, they've really been able to get a lot of attention on social media. They've done a good job on that. Just being like real shit disturbers, but also just tapping into national networks. Matthew Green, the superstar MP from Hamilton, Ontario, has been helping them out with events, and it's been great to see. Yeah, I mean, you're right. My name is Hello. I mean, Trump did activate the base, and Hillary failed to activate her base. Right? In fact, I think it's like Trump activated the base, but I would say the bigger success was like, how am I going to put this? Hillary failed more than Trump succeeded, is my view. Like, yeah, Trump did activate his base and he got them out to vote and all of that matters. And he was able to convince somehow evangelical Christians that he was actually one of theirs. He did all of that. But fundamentally, Hillary Clinton failed to activate her base. And that was the issue. That more than anything was the issue. Hillary Clinton didn't get young people out to vote. She didn't get them to Pokemon Go to the polls. She didn't get black people to vote as much. And yes, some of those people were disenfranchised through voter suppression. But most of them chose not to vote. She didn't get a lot of people to vote in significant numbers. Just didn't activate her base. See, Robert Tiro, I don't know if that's the case. Yeah, MSNBC viewers, I get what you're saying. But really, though, it's like, whether we agree with it or not, if a young person votes, if they do get out and vote, they're just so much more likely to vote Democrat than Republican. Like, they did an analysis in the last election. And if only people under 30, it was either 30 or maybe 35. If only people under 35 could vote, the Democrats would have won 49 or 48 of the states. Like, just an absurd amount. That means even some extremely deep red states, young people in those states are voting Democrat. They're voting Democrat. Do you know what I mean? They've been voting Democrat. And the fact of the matter is, like, people of color, it's the same thing. If you excluded white voters, and this was 2016, literally every single state would have been won by the Democrats. So yeah, like, I mean, look, when I say that, she needed to get those people to vote, and she didn't. And Biden could have the same issue. Got to get these people out to vote. Got to get young people to vote. Got to get black people to come out and vote. And the way you do that is you don't fucking yell at Ryan Knight and Susan Sarandon on Twitter 7 hours a day. You phone bank and you canvass. You do those sorts of things. Did you guys see the video? Did you see this? I'm not making this up. This. Let me see if I can find this. There was I don't know if I can find it anymore. But there was a thing about Biden. Apparently Biden actually is phone banking. I don't know if they're doing a lot of it, but apparently they are doing some. And there was something about them not not talking about policy. I'm trying to see if I can find that clip or that thing, but there was a screenshot of a Biden Slack group or Discord or whatever. And somebody asked the moderator on it, who might have been a staffer or a volunteer in the campaign, and they basically said, what do we do in terms of policy? Like, what do we want to talk about? Are we talking about healthcare? Are we talking about environment? Are we talking about all these things? And what they were told was, we don't want to talk about policy unless we have to. Unless asked, try to avoid policy. We just want you to talk about Joe Biden and what he means for America. Now, maybe that person was just going rogue and that's not the full representation of the Biden campaign's outreach, but I doubt it. I think that's probably representative. And what that tells me is they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get it. If you want to drive turnout, you got to give people a reason to vote. I talked about this in my video about Ed Markey, the night Ed Markey beat Joe Kennedy. We talked about this, how the Democratic establishment is still convinced that, why would young people vote for Ed Markey? Joe Kennedy is actually a young person, at least relatively. He's a relatively young guy. Why wouldn't they support the guy that's 30 years younger than Markey? Why wouldn't they? And the answer, of course, is because, I want to see more young people in politics. I do. I do think it's a shame there's not one single millennial in the entire Senate. It's not right. It's not right. But the fact of the matter is, it's not just about age. It's about values. It's about ideals. Things like that, right? And so, in some ways, Biden needs to sell people on that. Why can't he... look, even within his own policy book, if he just talk more about the $15 minimum wage, talk more about making it easier to join a union, because these are in his policy book. Again, whether you think it's genuine or not, at this point, I'm advising him on how to not lose the election, right? So, it's not even about whether Biden would be good or not. It's can you win? Talk about a $15 minimum wage. Talk about making it easier to join a union. Talk about how you have certain programs to invest in green jobs. I know he doesn't support the Green New Deal, but he's got piecemeal things. Talk about your public option. Talk about how anyone who needs healthcare can get it. Again, I know it's a lie, but talk about that. Why aren't they talking about it? It's they want to lose. And I know they don't want to lose. People will say that the Democrats are literally trying to lose. I don't think that's true. I don't think Joe Biden is secretly saying, I want to lose this election. I don't think that Kamala Harris is secretly saying, I don't actually want to be vice president. But what I do think is they know what it takes to win. They know what it takes to win. They know it. And they're saying, look, we want to win. We'd rather win than lose. But if we have to do what it takes to win, which is adopt at least some of Bernie's ideas, maybe not all of them, but just adopt some of Bernie's ideas, we would rather lose than that. And that's what I think is happening here. Biden, of course, wants to be president. Kamala Harris, of course, wants to be vice president. Nancy Pelosi, of course, wants to remain Speaker of the House. Like, they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't. But they don't want to do what it actually takes to win. Is if they did, they do it. And the Democrats, like if the Democrats ran on just some of Bernie's policies, I could not see them losing this. Everything. Trump being awful combined with his racism, turning a lot of suburbanites off, combined with like just the commitment towards greater economic equality. Honestly, I couldn't see them losing, but I can see them losing now. I mean, I'm not pro-police unions. I think there's a difference between... See, here in Canada, we have, like, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms recognizes the right to bargain collectively as a basic human right. So in that sense, in a basic human right sense, police officers should have the right to collectively bargain. I don't want to take away that right. I would just rather abolish the police than take away their right to collectively bargain. But under no circumstances should the police be welcomed into the labor movement. They should not be seen as allies of working people. They should not be welcomed to labor councils and federations and the Canadian Labor Congress. Now, to my knowledge, there are no direct police unions that are members of like these federations. Correct me if I'm wrong. Whereas I know in the US, some of the cop unions are a part of the AFL-CIO. See, that I'm not in favor of. That I'm not in favor of. That I'm not in favor of. Oh, apparently there's a cricket. It's either in my room or it's near a window. It's still going on right now. I don't know where it is, and I have to look for it after stream. So I deeply apologize about that. I didn't know if you guys could hear it or how well you could hear it. Oh yeah, like you could talk about why cop unions suck, they do. But like in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada guarantees the right to bargain collectively. And specifically, the case that determined that in part included the Royal Canadian Mounted Police wanting to collectively bargain. They weren't able to do so until that court case. Well, see, I'm not sure, right? Again, I believe working class people should be able to organize themselves in unions, not just organizations I agree with. But the question of the labor movement, right, is who do you think should belong to the movement? And people have had this debate. Some people will even say, look, maybe fossil fuel related things shouldn't be part of the movement because they're causing harm to the planet. I disagree with that. But I'm just saying there's debates. Like, what unions belong in the movement? But I would say cop unions don't, even if from a constitutional basis of human rights, I would not take away the right to strike and bargain collectively from any worker. I would not do it. Kay Grogan for federal NDP leader. Justin, I don't know about that. I think Jagmeet is doing a decent job. He's doing, in some ways, a very good job. We'll leave it at that. No need to talk about a new leader right now. Sanwal Yousaf says, how can we develop global left solidarity when leftists in the West are completely ignorant of the struggles of leftists in the global South? I mean, that's a damn good question. Sanwal, that's a damn good question. And I don't know the answer fully. I mean, in a sense, it's like we're not even always ignorant. Sometimes we're hostile. Like, and I know like they're not the left, like corporate Democrats aren't the left. But if you look at the way a lot of like Democrats talk about Venezuela or Bolivia, it's like they sound like goddamn, like they sound like they're fucking Pinochet supporters, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is like a language barrier in some cases. It's like we don't speak Spanish and I don't speak Spanish. So it's like, how do I get my news from these parts of the world? We don't get an accurate portrayal of what's happening in these countries. Either the left-wing countries that are getting couped or the right-wing regimes that are being whitewashed, in Central and South America. I think honestly, it's about raising awareness. It's about fighting back against these coups. It's about challenging our own media. That's one thing we have to do better at, is challenging our own media when it like misrepresents what's happening. Like, for instance, it's not going to make a difference in and of itself right away, but I remember, and I've talked about this before, but when Bolsonaro was about, like, when he won his election and he was about to come to power, like in that interim period, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, basically our version of NPR and PBS, they were like, it's a great time to invest in Brazil. Like, it's a great time to invest in Brazilian mining companies because Bolsonaro is going to slash environmental regulations, and he's basically said he's going to genocide all the indigenous people and tear down their traditional lands for development, whether it's for cattle grazing or farming or mining or what have you. And so the whole argument was they will, he's good for Canadian investors because he's bad for the environment, and he's bad for indigenous people, and he's bad for the Brazilian working class. And when you add that all up, it's like the CBC endorsing this guy based on him being a monster, right? And so there's a lot of pushback there. We have to do a better job at that. We have to do a much better job at pushing back. And I mean, here on the left, we have to do a better job. I mean, the NDP even has to do a better job. We have to do a better job at showing solidarity with the left in a global sense. We're by far the best party in Canada. I know Lascaris is trying to make a difference in the Greens, but the Green Party basically supported the Bolivian coup. The NDP was the only party to criticize it. But with Venezuela, often we've been unclear at best. We have often awful takes on Israel-Palestine. And so I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to build these bridges of solidarity between the working class of developed nations and the working class of the world. You know? I don't know. And sometimes it's hard because, like, and I know this is over-exaggerated by neoliberals to try to stop us from doing any sort of change. But, like, class solidarity is international, but in broad terms, how many people in Canada are perhaps willing to lower their standard of living to raise the global standards of the global working class? Because that might be part of solidarity. Not the poor in Canada. The poor in Canada, like, are fine. But what if you're a teacher in Canada and you make $90,000 a year or $80,000 or $70,000, depending on where you are in your state of the career? That is a significant amount of money in global terms. without expanding our resources, we might not be able to afford to pay the global working class that amount of money. So where's it going to come from? Yes, it can come from billionaires. Yes, it can come from millionaires. But is the working class in Canada willing to sacrifice, even if only small amounts, to truly build an egalitarian world? Are we there? I don't know. I don't know if we're there. Fred says with Kate Grogan, the NDP would probably collapse the Green support and pull in the social liberals from the LPC, believe me. I mean, she seems really engaging. I don't know much about her. We'll see how she does in this election. She's running against the PC leader, and so the challenge there is that obviously she's running against a juggernaut. And she can't even really go up against him directly because he's dodging debates, and because as the leader, you know, he's often going province-wide. Leaders often spend very little time in their own ridings during a general election, unless they're in trouble. Like Kathleen Wynne in the last Ontario election, when it became clear she was going to lose, she basically stopped running a general election and basically started running as a local MP or MPP to save her riding. And Blaine Higgs is likely isn't in that sort of position, at least not right now. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see. I don't know. It's hard. If the NDP can win a seat in New Brunswick, then the monopoly that everyone assumes the Green Party has on progressives will be seen as an illusion. People will be willing to vote for the NDP. They just need to get over the hump. They need to win a seat. They need to win a seat. Shin says, am I a socialist? Yes, I am a socialist. Yes. Yeah, I mean, Sanwal says, I was surprised by how, and thank you for the support, Sanwal, it's very much appreciated. He says, I was surprised by how many progressives and leftists backed Evo Morales' coup. I think Michael Brooks did great, and I hope we keep learning. Yeah, Michael was great on that. Bad Empanada was great. I'd like to toot my own horn a little bit. I covered it at least a Canadian angle, and David Dole and I did at least one episode where we talked about that. David talked about it. I think we all did a good job. I know there were some other people in the broad progressive YouTube scene that had bad takes on this, and I don't think have really apologized for those awful takes. So I hope to see that. Maybe I missed a mea culpa from some people like David Pakman, right? Like, who basically said it wasn't a coup, but it was obviously a fucking coup. Right? Like, let's be real. But yeah, I mean, it was awful. It was at a total media homogeny here in Canada that it was not a coup. And if it was a coup, it was necessary. And sure, the Christian genocidal fascists, that are taking power are not great people, but they'll just be there for a little bit, we totally promise. And this is totally not about stealing their lithium, even though that's when Tesla's stock shot up even further. Like, and obviously they need lithium for their car batteries. Like, yeah. It's crazy. And that's the thing with Michael. He was in a great position to do international coverage. I want to do more. It's just, I'm just one guy. Like, Michael always had a team, whether it was through the Majority Report or his own channel. And I'm literally one guy, and especially with daycares closed, like, I barely have enough time to make my own content that I do right here. But Michael he devoted himself to really doing global coverage. He really did. And probably did a lot of the work to do it. It's not easy to do videos like this. Like, it's not everyone can just, like, talk unscripted on a quick shot and then post it on the internet and do it effectively. But it's easy to do that about U.S. politics relatively, because everyone kind of knows about it. You know about it. You're immersed in it. You don't need to constantly explain every little thing. Whereas if you're talking about Bolivia, you do. Who's Evo Morales? What's the MAS? What's the OAS? Who are the other parties? What is the controversy? How does the Bolivian constitution work? How do the Bolivian courts work? These are things that people don't know. And that if you're going to do the work, you have to at least give that explanation. And that means you have to know it, and you have to know it really well, because to give a quick explanation is often harder than to give a long one. People who are concise about something often know the most about it, if that makes any sense. So yeah, he was a rare talent. There was no one else like him that I can think of on YouTube. Lots of other great people, don't get me wrong. There's lots of other great people. But in terms of global coverage, there was nothing like him on YouTube. Nothing. Nothing like him. Yeah, and this is not Bob. Bob makes a good point. This is not to say that some of this work isn't currently being done on TMBS still by the crew. The crew is still there, and they're still doing a great job. And I hope that, I don't follow other channels' metrics, but I hope that they continue to find some success. But it certainly is, it certainly is something that, was lost when we lost Michael in particular. Oh yes, Richard Medhurst, yes, does a lot of international coverage. One thing that Michael did as well, though, was he did a lot of theory streams, but again, it's the difference. Richard, I think is a solo creator, and whereas Michael again had a team. And that's not to take anything away from Michael, of course, but it's when you have a team, it gives you more flexibility to kind of focus in on certain things you wouldn't be able to if you kind of do things on your own. If you're doing your own editing, if you're doing your own metadata, if you're doing all those sorts of things, it's very different if you're doing all your own audio visual work than if you're just being able to focus on the content. And there are certain channels that are one-man operations, and there are certain channels that are productions. The Majority Report groups are largely productions, right? The Young Turks, their main content anyway, is a production. They have staff. Remember, they have a union there. They have cameramen and mic operators, right? And then there are people like myself or David Dole, which are basically one-man operations. Mike Figueiredo at the Humanist Report, I think he might have an editor, maybe, but for the most part, he does things on his own. Kyle Kalinske, I don't know what his behind the scenes are, but it really feels like he kind of does it on his own, despite having a big channel. It really feels like the channel is his unfiltered voice. So even if he's getting help, he's not losing that, Sinistorius says, Aaron O'Toole was watching the Raptors game in his living room wearing a suit. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, maybe we could be charitable and say he just got back from a meeting and he popped the game on, and sometimes you come home from work, you don't have enough time to change. But yeah, that seems weird to me. I'm just casually watching the game in my suit. But again, he's trying to relate. He's trying to relate to people. Asking if somebody said if I ever was I nervous to start streaming? Not really. I mean, one thing for those who didn't follow me before I did YouTube, probably I started YouTube in early 2019, basically January, February 2019. And when I started, I had already done a few years of media stuff. Right? I had already done CBC interviews, live and recorded, a lot of live radio interviews, a lot of interviews on the CTV, live and recorded, global. All these are all big Canadian networks, basically. They're the Canadian equivalents of ABC, NBC, CNN, things like that. And so I had already done a lot of live work, in addition to lecturing at university, in front of a class. So talking on camera wasn't a big deal. from my perspective, either doing like recorded videos or my streaming. It's just, it's relatively natural for me. Shin said, I support Bernie, but isn't it true in 2016 he tried to override the will of the voters for superdelegates? I mean, there was a brief point where some people were musing about Bernie people making the argument to the superdelegates. I remember this briefly, and some people saying it was hypocritical because Bernie had talked so much about this. I don't know. I remember some people talking about that, but I don't know if that was Bernie himself or Bernie surrogates. I know the argument was that Bernie's actually the stronger candidate and the superdelegates should back him, because the superdelegates all along were saying, hey, like the reality is that the superdelegates are there to ensure that the party do the right thing. They are there to ensure that even if the voters want a certain thing, that we do what we think is best to help win in November. And so the argument was, regardless of whether, some like Howard Dean said, for instance, regardless of how my state voted in the election, I think Hillary is a better candidate than Bernie. And so is it hypocritical? In a sense it is, but it's also just using the game against your opponent. If the whole narrative is, regardless of what the voters want, the superdelegates are there to make the decision that's best for the party, then making the argument that Bernie's actually a stronger candidate than Hillary, like, is a reasonable one. And look, I think you should get rid of superdelegates. But Bernie would have been a better candidate, and Bernie would have won. If the superdelegates were actually what they're supposed to be, which is to do what supposedly would help the Democrats win, yeah, they should have ignored the voters and went with Hillary, and went with Bernie. But that's, of course, not what the superdelegates are there for. The superdelegates are there to protect the status quo, not to go with the candidate that they feel is the best. We saw the polling. Like, in this election, it was debatable. Both Bernie and Biden polled good against Trump. But the polling for Bernie versus Trump was significantly better in many cases than the Hillary versus Trump polling. Yeah, Aaron O'Toole isn't significantly... Well, Aaron O'Toole isn't 35, but Aaron O'Toole is, I believe... The new conservative leader is, I believe, only 2 years older than Justin Trudeau, or the same age as Justin Trudeau. Yeah, he is 2 years younger than Justin Trudeau, excuse me. The new conservative leader, I'm gonna give you guys a picture here. Let me see if I can get a picture here. Google Aaron O'Toole, and you will see a man that is 2 years younger than Justin Trudeau. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can send this to you guys. So that's yeah, right here. That man is 2 years younger than Justin Trudeau. Leslie with the fantastic chat saying, you're amazing. It looks to be a Shogun-style fox. And with the very generous support, Leslie, thank you so much as always. I very much appreciate it. With the fantastic fox. And I hope you're having a great one. Of course, I don't see a question attached, but if you ever have a question, do let me know. Always happy to hear from you. Yeah. So, but Shin, what I'm suggesting is the narrative from the neoliberals is that superdelegates are not stealing elections. Superdelegates are a part of the election that just happens to not be elected by the people. Yeah, I mean, I disagree with using them. And of course, as we recall this time, Bernie was instrumental in the new rule change. And the rule change was It didn't get rid of superdelegates, but the compromise was, and it wouldn't have happened without Bernie, was, okay, in round one, there are no superdelegates. In the first ballot of the convention, the only delegates are the ones chosen by the people. And superdelegates would only come into play if one of the candidates did not hit a majority on the first ballot. Right? So, as it happened, because the race quickly came down to two people after Super Tuesday, or really after, even quickly or shortly after that, and Biden started winning contests by pretty big margins, that it didn't really matter. But that's a compromise, because before, the superdelegates would have come in even on the first ballot. So that was a change Bernie made. Yeah, well, yeah, like Rob Ford, yeah, a lot of these sometimes people definitely look older, right? I mean, but Canadian politics is a younger game in general. The leaders of the three main parties in Canada are all under 50. You have Erin O'Toole at 47, Justin Trudeau at 48, and Jagmeet Singh at let me see. At 41. So all three Canadian main party leaders are in their 40s. So it's a younger game. Whereas in the US, all the people that were in contention for president this election and last election were in their 70s. In 2016, the real Hillary, Bernie, and Trump were all in their 70s. And this time around, if it's two men in their 70s, but Bernie was a close second, at least for a time, and he's also in his 70s. And Bloomberg, there are a couple weeks where Bloomberg had a shot. He's in his 70s. And if you thought maybe as a distant chance Elizabeth Warren had a shot, also in her 70s. Well, Jean Chrétien, when he became leader, let me look this up. Okay, Jean Chrétien. See, Jean Chrétien did have a very long political career, but got elected quite young. So Jean Chrétien is now 86. He's 86 years old now. And then became... Well, let me look this up. We can look this up. Okay, so if we look this up, okay, so here are Canadian prime ministers by their age. We're going to start this. By the age they were when they got elected for the first time. And so all of our really old ones were elected back in the day for the most part. So our oldest prime minister by election, or when they became prime minister, sometimes they became prime minister through appointment, because they our system works like that. If a person could become prime minister without being elected, because the prime minister resigns and then somebody else from their party becomes prime minister. So Charles Tupper back in the 1890s was 74. Mackenzie Bell in the 1890s was 70. John Abbott in the 1890s was 70. Louis Saint Laurent in 1948 was 66. And Lester Pearson in 1963 was 65. Paul Martin, who was Jean Chrétien's finance minister long-term, was briefly prime minister for a couple years, and he was 65 years old when he became prime minister. Then Diefenbaker, 61, Bennett, 61. See, Chrétien was 59. Jean Chrétien was only 59 when he became prime minister. So not a young man by any means, But to put that in perspective, he's only 4 years older than Kamala Harris is right now. So when Kamala Harris becomes, and Kamala Harris's birthday is in October, so he's 3 years older than Kamala Harris is when he became prime minister. So he's relatively young still, like in the grand scheme. So the last senior citizen prime minister to be elected as prime minister, not to serve as it, because you can serve for a long time, was indeed Paul Martin. Right? Was indeed Paul Martin. And he's the only one, Paul Martin is the only one since the 1960s. Everyone else has been relatively recent. Here are all the living Canadian prime ministers and when they've become prime minister. Paul Martin became prime minister at 65, Chrétien at 59, John Turner at 55, Stephen Harper at 46, Kim Campbell at 46, Brian Mulroney at 45, Justin Trudeau at 43, and Joe Clark at 39. So we've had a lot of young prime ministers. Yes, sorry, Doug. Yes, it's Kamala Harris. Yes. I get it right sometimes and then not others. I'm trying my best to fix it, but then I'll say Kamala, but then when I'm speaking quickly and like listing off her name, I'll say Kamala or Kamala, right? You know, I want to say Kamala. You know what I mean? So I'm trying my hard. Yeah. Kait Grogan, yeah. See, Grogan is an interesting one because in New Brunswick, you have a lot of people who have French-Canadian names, but their families have become Anglophonized, and so they pronounce their names like an Anglophone would. So I've heard Grogan and Grogan, right? Or Grogan, right? Like, so I've heard that name like in New Brunswick. It's an interesting one. My name is Hello said, did Spotify give Joe Rogan money to get him to move from the far right towards the left? Move, not become left. I mean, look, Joe Rogan was never on the far right. Joe Rogan, I think it's really hard to pin Joe Rogan down. On some issues, he's progressive, and on other issues, he's regressive. I don't know where he lands overall. Like, if you could plot all of his issues and then find the middle point, I'm guessing he'd be somewhere relatively in the middle, maybe slightly to the right. But then again, Joe Rogan really liked Bernie Sanders. And he wasn't against any major policy Bernie was running on. Spotify didn't give Joe Rogan money to move him to the far right or whatever, or move him out of the far right. Spotify gave Joe Biden money because Joe Rogan money because Joe Rogan has a massive ass podcast, and they know that if the Rogan podcast becomes exclusive to Spotify, then that will drive people to Spotify. That people who listen to podcasts on iTunes, those people will now listen to podcasts on Spotify. They'll go to get Rogan there, and maybe what they'll do is they'll start listening to their other podcasts on Spotify. So let's say you listen to Rogan, and then you also listen to 3 or 4 other podcasts. Now it's like, okay, well, I really like Rogan. I'm a huge Rogan fan. I'm going to listen to him no matter where he is. I'm going to go to Spotify, and I'm just going to start listening to all my other podcasts on Spotify. I'm going to get rid of my other podcasting apps. That's why it's about. They gave him huge amounts of money. Well, you have to, right? Because like anytime somebody wants you exclusively, you want a premium for that. It's like if, it's like you have to give them a deal. It's like universities, like I don't know about this in the States, but did you ever like have universities where they would only sell Coke or Pepsi products? And what they're doing there is the company is likely giving the university a deal for the exclusivity. If you give someone exclusivity, saying I can only sell this product or I can only broadcast on this network, you have to give them something. The same thing with Twitch, I believe. Twitch gives special perks to high volume streamers on their channel. But then you're not allowed to stream on other channels. Once you reach a certain level on Twitch, I don't believe you're allowed to stream on other networks. You basically become exclusive to Twitch. That's why the Surfs, for instance, they make content on YouTube, but they only ever stream on Twitch. So that's something to consider. So guys, I think with that in mind, I'm going to wrap up. Normally we finish between 10:30, 10:15, 10:30. We're getting around that time. Before I go, just a couple more things. If you haven't yet, please check out the Discord. The Discord is a great the Discord is a fantastic source for news about the channel, just for talking with other folks. Also, follow me on Twitter. I will drop my Twitter here. You can follow me there for up-to-date news about the channel. And if you want to support the channel, again, the best way you can support the channel is by watching the content. Again, I post videos pretty much every day, often multiple times a day. You should often get notifications if you click the bell, but if I post more than 3 in a day, sometimes you don't get notifications on the last one. So, like, keep that in mind to check the channel out. Make a habit of checking out the channel. Makes it good. It helps the channel a lot. Also, you could support the channel through Patreon and PayPal. Those links are all in the description. One thing I want to know before you head out. I've been clicking an ad button that YouTube has allowed us to. Have you been getting ads during this stream? Sometimes our streams get demonetized for ad purposes because we talk about certain programs. Yes, Kate is fantastic. One thing to note, guys, before I go. In New Brunswick is a rare province where you can make political donations at the provincial level, even if you don't live in New Brunswick. Okay? Right? So, if you want to support the New Brunswick NDP, you can do that by giving out to their link. Let me see if I can find the link. Now, you can't donate if you're not Canadian, I don't believe. But you can donate if you are a Canadian citizen, even if you don't live in New Brunswick. And I believe you can specify your donation to the particular campaign. And I believe Kate is running in Quispam Sis, I believe. Is she running in Quispam Sis? Let me know. Let me know where she's running. And if you want to donate a campaign to her specifically, you can donate there. So if you want to support the New Brunswick NDP, you can do that through the link. Again, it's a rare opportunity to do that. So you could donate to her specifically, or you could donate to the general party. All of those links are there. So yeah, so if you want to donate to her campaign in particular, feel free to do so. But there's other, also you can give to the central party, whatever you want to do. Consider doing that. No pressure. You don't have to do that. But I've made a personal donation to the general provincial party a couple days ago. So guys, thank you so much for this. This was fantastic. I will see you next Wednesday. Oh wait, did people get ads? Yeah. We might not get as many because the stream might be demonetized. But it's something to keep in mind. If you see ads in the middle of the stream, I click a button every now and then. We'll see if it generates revenue. In any case, I will see you next week. There'll be videos up every day. And I will be with you next Wednesday as well. Okay, have a good one, guys. Thank you so much.